So today, what I will be doing is something similar to what we did in the last lesson where we learned how to work with a designer. But instead of talking about designers, I will be talking about engineers. So with that, as always, let's jump into it and start learning. Now, if you remember where we left off in the last lesson, we have hopefully now gotten two concepts from our two industrial designers. And the first task for the engineers will be a really simple one. We will simply have them consult us on the concepts that we received from the designers and evaluate these concepts on their manufacturability. And similar to how we did with the designers, I would advise that you hire two engineers and then have both of them consult on these concepts. And that way you can see who does a better job and continue working with that one. Also, similar to as when you would go to a doctor, you now get a second opinion when it comes to the feasibility of your concepts. So that is another reason for why having two engineers is a better choice than just going with one. And as always, if there is something secret about what we will be discussing, then we should get an NDA signed by all of the freelancers that we will consult with. Then once we have all of the NDAs signed, we can go ahead and set up the consultation using Calendly, which will automatically align our time zones and select a time where we are available. Then before the consultation takes place, you should send all of the engineers the concepts that your designers have delivered. And tell the engineers that you're primarily looking for input on, number one, which manufacturing technologies can be recommended for the various concepts, and then number two, what concept they see as the easiest one to manufacture and what concept they see as the most difficult one. And of course, to explain the reasoning behind this. And for now, I would not share the manufacturing suggestions which the industrial designers have come up with, because that would influence the answers of the engineers, and we want them to go into this unbiased so that they can make their own decision on what is the best way to manufacture these concepts. And then to make it a little bit more concrete, let's imagine that we're developing a phone holder and that the designers got back with the following three concepts. So if we are gonna go through these concepts with an engineer, they might say that, okay, this part, it could be created out of sheet metal, this part could be injection molded, and so on. And then we can take note on what they suggest and also think about what that means for our product. So for example, we know that if a part needs injection molding, then we know that it needs a lot of startup cost to create the mold. And then once you have cross-checked with the engineers what they suggest, then I would bring out the suggestions of the designers and see what the engineers think about that. And if the mechanical engineers think that the suggestions of the designers are completely crazy, if they are completely unrealistic, then that's a really bad sign for continuing work with that designer, right? Because as said before, we are really looking for somebody who can not just create things that look great, but somebody who can create things that can be manufactured in the end. Then once we have talked with all of our engineers, and once we have discussed all of our concepts that the designers have provided for us, then it's time to make a decision on which concept to continue with. And this is not the end-all be-all decision, because we will still do more testing before we manufacture this, of course. But I do advise you to put some thought into this. So balance all of the information that you have been provided by the engineers and think about what concept would work best for your target customer. And of course, the visual aesthetic will be an important part in this decision. However, I really strongly suggest that you don't go with a concept that looks great if the engineers showed clear signs of doubt about how it will be manufactured, because then you will come into this very common situation of having something that looks great on paper, but having something that also cannot be brought into real life. And with that, let's finish off this lesson with today's task. And the task is to consult at least two engineers on your product concepts and then select one concept to continue with based on their feedback. So good luck, and I hope that you get a bunch of valuable feedback, and I will see you in the next lesson.